It's a ton of fun.
This is Basic AF, a mostly tech podcast, mostly with a couple of mostly decent fellas, Tom Anderson and Jeff Battersby. Back at it again, JB. As always, my friend, it is a pleasure.
Yes, I would agree with that. It's nice to see you again, Tom.
Likewise. And I don't know if you can believe it or not, but we're up to episode 33.
33, which is just a couple of years younger than I am.
A few. You and me both.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
So just a reminder, you can find us at basicafshow.com. All your favorite, what we call your backlist. Our backlist is there. So
our
you
catalog.
Can go back and listen to everything. Our catalog, correct. You have the opportunity to go check some of those things out. So basicafshow.com, feedback at basicafshow.com. You can send us messages, or on Instagram and Threads, you can get to us at, is it Basic AF or Basic AF Show?
Basic AF Show.
There you go. So, and we have been fielding some questions there. So feel free to send us, thoughts and prayers or whatever it is that you wanted to. And we'd be happy to deal with that. Show music that you hear at the top of this that I dance to uproariously and Tom gives me side eye about. Psychokinetics, Celsius 7. Check them out on your favorite streaming platforms. And our podcast artwork, the main stuff that you see in your podcast app, is Randall Martin Design. So check Randall out as well. That's, by the way, randallmartindesign.com. You can find him.
Yes, and we do thank Randall and Celsius 7 for the artwork and the music.
Yeah, it's fun. I get to dance, and Tom gets to
enjoy your dancing.
Right.
Yes. All right, JB, what do we have on tap for today?
So, Tom, I have a confession. Sorry, is this therapy?
In ways, yes.
It kind of is, isn't it? When Apple put Apple News on everything, I felt the way that some people felt about U2's album being automatically put on everybody's phone, although I liked the album. I thought, who gives? Live and rip. But I have to confess that I have become a fan of Apple News. I have been using this now almost every day as a means of checking out a variety of things. I, have subscriptions to like the Washington Post and the New York Times. Actually, I haven't looking. Okay, great. English major. That's me. Looked to see whether or not actually New York Times posts their stuff here, because I just usually go straight to the New York Times app. But I have been somewhat impressed with this. The more I use it, I have several magazines that I read on a regular, The Atlantic and a couple of others, Time magazine. And what I'm finding is that this is a good repository, good space for me to be able to look at those things. The other thing I noticed recently is, Apple put out their sports app just a little bit ago, and, you get to select teams on the sports app, and those teams, the ones that I selected in Apple's little sports app, are all now showing up in my feed in Apple News. So very surprised by how much I've come to actually rely on this as a means of, getting up to speed, particularly when I'm in line at the grocery store. I hate to say this, but my typical go-to is Threads, which I need to break myself of that habit because I do it too often and can burn many hours there. But, the ability to look at a quick news article, read a couple of local newspapers. We've got the Times Union up in Albany, Albany, New York, that I check in with because that's local and definitely political news from the capital of New York. but a lot of good stuff. And I'm surprised at myself because I really thought, this is one I could delete. But I'm really kind of happy that it's on my phone. Do you use this, Tom?
I do a little bit here and there. I have a widget set up on the phone. I can kind of see like the top headlines that it dumps into that. And I think you can customize what you want those to be a little bit. So you have some options there. And just to clarify, this is the subscriber edition of Apple News, right? You've got the subscription through the bundle of some sort.
Yeah. I've got it through the bundle.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah,
I
me
have
too.
And that's, I probably would not have paid for this by itself. So if it weren't a part of that, a part of my, I can't even remember what package I have now, Premiere, Apple One Premiere, or whatever it is.
Is that the top one?
Yeah, that's the top tier.
That's what I have too.
The whole family has, and Apple TV Plus and all that jazz.
Right.
But it's part of that, and it's great. It really is great.
Yeah, and if you remember when they raised the price of the subscriptions there last year, I think it was, and they did the top bundle went up from $32.95, which had already seen an increase there from $29.95, I think is when it started at, and so it went up to $32.95. Now it's $37.95, and so I was looking to see if I could maybe save a few bucks and drop a couple of the things, like because I was like, I don't really use Apple News, and then of course I found out. My wife does all the time. Like she reads the magazines apparently, which I had no idea. So, yeah, I may have to go back and look at it a little more. Like I haven't, like I said, every now and then I will open it, just look around, and I've got some I don't know what they call them. It's in the following section where you can follow publications, but you can also follow like categories.
Yes.
And so I've set up a few of those that I check in with from time to time. And then there's the suggested by series section down at the bottom, which doesn't look too bad just glancing at it here. But yeah. So would you say where's your split? Like how much is the actual news coverage versus the magazines that they provide?
So it's probably close to 50-50. If I look at all the magazines and in some cases newspapers that I have here, I've got probably about 25 different publications that I'm looking at, including, by the way, the Wall Street Journal, which I wouldn't subscribe to, but I have access to now as a result of the fact that that's part of a standard subscription. So I have a number of those that I follow, and a lot of times I'll find myself like I subscribe to The Atlantic, but more often than not, I'm reading those articles on my phone in Apple News. New York Magazine and the New Yorker, which I have at various points in time subscribed to. Again, part of this subscription, so now I have full access to those magazines and full access to those magazines. For example, just finished reading a really good article on a guy named Dr. Huberman.
Yep.
Which was really compelling, really kind of interesting.
Man, he's caught some heat from that.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's been catching some heat for some of the things he discusses too. I don't listen to his show much, but I'm aware of what it is and everything. But anyway.
Yeah.
Proceed.
So the upside for me is that I have access to this stuff that honestly, you can only afford to subscribe to so many different magazines, and my weekend subscription to the New York Times costs a bloody fortune, and that's just 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. I get that. So it's really a nice way for me to have access to a lot of different stuff, which, by the way, we can kind of go down a little path here for a minute. We kind of talked about this with Gannon a little bit ago, but one of the things that drives me crazy about the current state of things is you get essentially a death by 1,000 cuts, because if you want to read something on Substack, you have to you subscribe to every single individual Substack. And pretty soon it costs more than my New York Times subscription does. It's a lot of stuff. So I like the fact that I have access as a part of a broader subscription to these various places where I would have to spend a heck of a lot of money in order to be able to have access to this. It's again, I'm surprised, because I honestly thought, who the heck needs, Apple News? And it really has become kind of a resource for me. I've found a lot of really good information and have the opportunity to read a lot of publications that I otherwise might not have. I wouldn't have had the time to, or I had to go to the library or something to get a copy of the New Yorker so I could see cool comics and snarky New York commentary on the rest of the world. So I'm finding it really, really good. Do you have any collection of magazines or anything like that you're using regularly?
Not really. I've got some things there on the following section. And I did set up a thing for NFL. I've got the Broncos in there. This is my football team that I like. And then other than that, I just kind of, browse around, and a lot of times, I forget about the magazines, because they do get fed into the feed,
yes,
to a certain degree. But, if you have a subscription and you haven't, maybe click that News Plus link that's in the kind of the upper left there, right under Today. And then you can see the newspapers and magazines. And it's a pretty extensive catalog. Some of them are just like PDF replications of the magazine, so it looks just like the print. Yes. And then some of them, though, do take advantage of, I guess that's the native News Plus formatting that they're using, where they're actually just, you scroll and there's a link to the story, and it's more like a web page, I guess. But but there's a lot. There's National Geographic, Time, People, The New Yorker, Wired, Vanity Fair.
Cosmopolitan.
You can get that too if you want. And then, of course, you can set up your My Magazine section.
And they have a full catalog. Kind of they really have
pretty extensive.
An extensive, it really, and that's the amazing thing about it, is that you have access to a lot of really good material if you want it. A bunch of newspapers, including newspapers like the Times of London. So it's not just limited to the United States. I'm a Bay Area boy. I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area. And so I have a news feed that's specifically for the Bay Area. So it's
there you go.
A collection. So I have the ability to kind of keep in touch with my roots, which I like. And again, this is part of, if you have any Apple subscriptions like Apple One, this shows up there. It's a part of it. So I'm going to say, I'm a believer now. Not
recommended
believer
by Jeff Battersby. Take a look. And they've got crossword puzzles, which you say aren't the best, but they have.
Well,
maybe not the most challenging, we should say.
Here's the true story. So ask me if I've ever done much in the way of crossword puzzles, and the answer to that would be no. Ask me if I've done a few of these. The answer to that would be yes. Ask me if I was challenged. The answer would be no. And pretty much any crossword puzzle challenges me. So, not my bag, but, fun. Again,
do those work with Apple Pencil and the iPad by chance?
I've never tried it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. That's the first thing that popped to mind. But
yeah, and the truth of the matter is you just type it in.
Just
try it.
Which would probably be difficult to interpret handwriting when it's as bad as mine. So I could see why it wouldn't work with Apple Pencil if it doesn't. So
same.
Yep.
So anyway,
right, cool.
That's it. Next up in this, rehash of stuff that we think we might like or wouldn't like, the Journal app. I re-added the Journal app to my phone for this episode. But how do I say this and be generous? You know what? it's great to journal. I have done journaling on and off for probably since I was in my late teens, early 20s. I will journal around specific things, and I think it's, a good way to kind of get stuff, I don't know, hashed out. Some of my kids journal on the regular, and it's a very valuable tool. There is something for me that is important about having an actual pencil in your hand and taking that pencil and kind of scribbling out what it is that you're trying to work through. There's something, maybe I'm just old, true. But I found the journal app to be more cute for my purposes than valuable. It does a lot of really good things. So it will look at the photos that you've taken over the last couple of days. It will look at, if you put in your calendar app that you're having lunch with a friend at some restaurant, gives you the ability to, it'll take that calendar information and say, hey, you were having lunch with Steve. Do you want to journal about that? So it will look at some of the locations that you've been and offer those suggestions as well. So there's a lot there that can be used to prompt you, which is useful, particularly if you've never journaled in any way before. It offers that kind of option. It feels to me, because you're tapping stuff out on the screen, less organic than a pen and paper kind of journaling, and that's my biggest piece with that. It's, I don't know. To be fair, I've never really used any computer-based or iPhone-based journaling app before. I will, for fun, during the month of February, I write a poem every day. Because it's the shortest month of the year. and that's almost always, I should say, done on in the Notes app. I use the Notes app extensively for that, and rarely scribble any ideas out on a piece of paper. But for the kind of deep think, dig into my soul, go to therapy kind of journaling that I need to do, I don't know. The journal app hasn't done it for me. So have you used it at all?
I have used it a little bit. I've got, let's see, how many entries do I have in here? 2.
Two. Okay.
2 whole entries, yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's a lifetime of stuff, Tom.
December 11th, 2023, and January 2nd of this year. And I think it was just because I saw it posted somewhere. I was like, well, I should go back and look at it. One was about the holidays and just some notes on that and what we did and everything, and attached a whole bunch of pictures to it. And so I have never really been I don't know, maybe we'll call it a traditional journaler, in the sense that I do it in a way to do some mind clearing or whatever. In essence, I do journaling like behaviors quite frequently, right? Because I'm always taking notes at work on various topics, what I'm thinking about those things that I like, don't like, what I'm concerned about, stuff like that. But on the personal sense, where I sit down and kind of, maybe do some, I don't know, things that I'm grateful for and things that I'm concerned about, and just, clearing your head types of things. Haven't really done a whole lot of that. I use the gym time as my head clearing space. But I have started to try it out, and maybe not even in that sense where it's such a, where it's necessarily a deep thing, where it may just be more of a log, life's, a log of life, and say, here's some things that happened that were kind of cool this week, maybe some pictures, some random thoughts. I think that one of the things that I like for apps to do are to automatically resurface things for me. Photos, for example, does a great job of that with the memories. And you'll see that I have a widget on all my devices just for that, and so those pop up, and so that's really great. I did just recently resubscribe to Readwise,
What is that?
The service. So that's a service that you can link into the Kindle app, the Books app, RSS, bunch of other things. And your notes from the book get synced into Readwise, and you can go and review them there if you want to. But it also does an email that it will send to you on some sort of a cadence, and you can choose what you want that to be. Is it once a day, every other day? And then what it will do is it will resurface some of the highlights you have made in the different books that you've read.
Interesting.
And I've found that because a lot of times you read a book, you highlight something, and then it just disappears. And so it's like, oh, well.
Right.
And so that, I used it for a while and I dropped it. And so I'm going back to that again because I started the other day. I was looking through some of my notes for something, and I was like, it'd be really nice if this would just be resurfaced to kind of keep some of these ideas into my head. So I have gone back to that. And so I don't know how much the journal app does that sort of thing. I'm just not that familiar with it. And so what I've done is I have kicked up another trial of day one for journaling. But of course, there is a basic version that you can use, and then there's a premium version. And so I'm trying that one. The biggest thing with the journal app right now is that it's just on the phone.
Yes.
And I don't really want to sit there and type much on the phone more than I have to. So yeah, that's something that is a drawback. But again, it goes to some of our other discussions on the way Apple approaches certain things. So it'll probably come to the iPad or something, maybe at the developer conference. Why they drag some of these things out, I have no idea. But yeah,
it makes a lot more sense to me to have it be on the computer than it does on the phone. Again, right. for the very reason that you're talking about. It's not, to my mind, as suitable. It's the most convenient because it's the one that's nearest you. That's typically the phone. It's going to be in your pocket, and you're gonna have access to it. That's pretty simple. But it's, for me, if I'm thinking, it's not the best thinking device.
Right.
The phone's not. iPad, yes. Mac, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But
and Apple did they did provide the suggestions. Whoa, knocked over my light here. Hold on. All right, we'll reset that. Apple did provide the suggestions API. And so day one has that capability too, once you enable it. So it will look at, those things you mentioned with the journal app, where it will say, hey, you met with Jeff and you guys went to lunch, and maybe capture a note about that. And so it could do that kind of thing too. And biggest thing is it's got ways, day one has ways to get your data out of the app, should you want to. So, that's a thing for me, is like it's locked into the journal app, and I'm not aware of a way to get it out yet. It's just kind of in there if you wanted to move it to day one, or just to the notes app even, or something like that.
So yeah, it's I don't know. Who knows? Maybe in a year or so, which is how long it took me to get into Apple News, maybe it will result in in me looking at it differently. But I did almost delete it. I deleted it almost I don't know, a month after I had it, because the other thing that was annoying about it is, hey, maybe you should journal today. And it was like, no, I don't want to journal today.
Oh, with the reminder.
Yeah, you got a regular reminder telling you what you were supposed to do.
I think you can turn that off. I'm not sure,
you probably can, but don't need to take up that bandwidth on the on my phone. Just don't need to do it. We'll see. Maybe if it shows up on a computer, or an iPad at the very least on the iPad,
right? And I know the big thing is you've got your Apple security around it, right, with the big privacy stances that they've taken. So it's one of the things I looked at with day one, and it does do end-to-end encryption now. It didn't used to always do that. And nice. it ran on top of Dropbox and iCloud for a long time, and then they just moved to like a day one sync and added the end-to-end encryption on it because of, it's Dropbox and iCloud sync. Dropbox usually is more solid, but sometimes not. And then for vendors, it's hard because they only have so much access to being able to fix these types of things. So,
why was it that you decided to hop on day one?
it's on iPad, Mac.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that makes sense. Apple, I hope you're listening. Because we know somebody at Apple's listening to this podcast every week, every other week. What I said about pen to paper, if it was on the iPad and I could just scribble down what I'm doing on the iPad and have it convert that to text like it does so nicely,
Yep.
even with my crappy handwriting, that would provide that option for me. That would make it worthwhile. So maybe I would consider it in that case if I had the ability to sit with the iPad and just write for a couple minutes. There's a thought for you, Apple, that putting that on the iPad would be, in my opinion, a better choice for being able to journal rather than, tapping the way that I currently am.
I will make a bold prediction.
Make a bold prediction.
That'll happen in the fall.
What do you think?
iPad OS 18. I mean, that's typically what they do. iPhone gets it and then they trickle it down.
Add it. Yeah.
Bring it in later. Yep.
All right.
And of course, you don't need one of these apps to journal either. I mean, you have notes or like you do pen and paper work. Just go.
No, I do. I am a collector of. I have more notebooks than I'm ever going to be able to write in for my entire life. I have a field notes subscription.
Yep. Remember that.
Love field notes, and so I can tell you right off the bat that that's a way that I write a lot of stuff down. If I have last minute ideas or things like that, I'm either typing it into the notes app if it's something quick, or down on paper. In one of those apps. So yeah, definitely a thing. So there you go. That's me.
All right.
That's me on that. And I have one other thing, Tom, a little confession to make.
Ooh, confession time. What do you got?
It's church, right? You're going to keep this a secret, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
So a couple of weeks back, maybe more than a couple of weeks back, I was listening to a podcast, really good podcast. PJ Vogt has a new podcast out that I quite like. And he was talking, it's called Search Engine, by the way, Search Engine with PJ Vogt. I highly recommend. He was talking with the guy that had developed a game called Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is a card game. Basically, you collect a bunch of cards. You get a basic set, and you continue to collect a bunch of cards as you go along. And it kind of is a combination of poker, and where there's some randomness built into it. You play 3 hands with one other person. They typically last about 5 minutes, between the beginning of any game. So you can pick it up and, while you're taking care of business in the bathroom or something. Sorry, too much information. And play this game. And it's challenging in the sense that, it's because it's a combination of, random cards that you're pulling from your deck and random placements. There are 3 different pads that you can put up to 4 cards on. And those pads offer, various either power upgrades or power downgrades, depending on what it is, or a number of other features. It's a ton of fun. Kind of mindless. Although when I say mindless, there is some work to be done as far as, figuring out how you're going to beat the dude or the dudette that you're playing with. I know it was sexist. But it's a gas. And I've been playing this now for probably a month or a month and a half. In fact, you know what we'll do is in the show notes, we'll put a link to the podcast I listened to. And that podcast episode was called How Do You Make an Addictive Video Game? And I'm going to say it's it is addictive. And it's addictive because it's simple, it's challenging, but it's a lot of fun. So here's a podcast episode. I just put it in the show notes.
Okay.
So we can add that. I listened to the podcast, and you'll see why I immediately, after listening to that podcast, downloaded the app and began playing it. And it's just a lot of simple fun. So I would highly recommend Marvel Snap. And why I'm addicted, and you can see why you might be addicted. And the developer that created this, who PJ Vogt interviewed and talked with on this particular podcast, seems like a really fun guy, like really, really cool, really thoughtful, and the idea behind how it is that he created this particular podcast, this particular game is really interesting. Guy's name is Ben Brode. He was one of the guys that developed Hearthstone, which is another card-based game, and then Marvel Snap, which I never really played Hearthstone, but Marvel Snap, man, I'm in. I am in it.
How often a week do you play, would you say?
Every day.
Oh, wow.
Every day, again, with sometimes like yesterday, I just played one, maybe two hands.
Right. It? Just quick.
Yeah. So, and that's the beauty of it. It's not like I have been playing still the Switch, but that's a little bigger commitment. I know I'm sitting down for 20 or 30 minutes at a minimum to do that. So anyway, I recommend that, first of all, search engine altogether. Hey, PJ, feel free to have us on your show, or come to our show. That'd be even better. And then,
would be nice. Yeah.
But the whole idea of how do you make it an addictive video game, this guy is really, really interesting. And I, highly recommend that podcast and that particular episode. So there you go. And then, great. Maybe you can find me, you can't really play directly with people that I'm aware of in Marvel Snap, but if you see Reyes Point, here's a theme on Marvel Snap.
That's you?
That's me.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I see they've got in-app purchases, which is fine.
Yeah, well, all those games do.
Yeah, they all do that. So how playable is it if you stay out of the purchases?
Oh, you don't have to buy anything. The in-app purchases are like, power-ups if you want to buy a special card.
Seasonal pass plus.
No, don't need to do anything.
$15. Now, if you want to go hardcore and get the gold 8,000, which I have no idea what that is, $100.
I haven't spent a penny.
Good.
And you can...
Well, see, that's a nice balance. So that some games, it's like they get you just far enough, and then you got to dump cash into it. Yeah. And so I think when there's that balance where you can extend what you're able to do with the purchase, but not be too detrimental from the gameplay itself, I think that's a nice balance to hit. It sounds like they did, so that's good.
As long as you win hands.
Don't catch hands. Win hands.
What's that?
You don't want to catch hands.
Catch hands.
Yeah.
You
don't want to do that. That hurts. So you can win hands.
But win hands.
Right.
Yeah, no catching. Thank you.
No, too old for that. It takes too long to feel better.
Yeah, no. If you win hands, then that's you can continue to collect all the little goodies. And I probably have over collected. Like instead of I spend my money immediately, I spend my points immediately. There are probably ways that I could save it. Anyway,
all right, fun. Yeah, check it out.
Marvel Snap.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah. Awesome. I will add a link to our show notes. And that's us, Tom. We've done it again. We've burned another 30, 35 minutes of your time.
And I just want to say how proud I am that you've broken the habit of burning another hour. I know that took a little while.
Look at me. I've grown up.
Yeah, look at progress.
Right. I'm still looking in the wrong drawer for the Q-tips, but
can't win at everything.
Moved to a new drawer for the last 20 years, but
yeah. So I guess that is a wrap, friends. We do, as always, greatly appreciate you hanging out with us, spending time, giving us feedback and everything like that, spreading the word, all of it. Very much appreciated. So thanks yet again. We do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your night, and we look forward to catching you next time.
Thank you very much, and see you.